Hi, it's Amy Genson, Geriatric Care Manager and owner of Genson Geriatrics Management. Thanks for joining me in this month's Spotlight series. In my past episodes, I've introduced you to fellow professionals in the field of aging. But with the holidays upon us, I thought I would take this opportunity to address a specific topic. According to the US Department of Health and Human Services, almost 50% of older adults report feeling lonely on a regular basis. The holidays, however, may compound those feelings, evoking feelings of increased loneliness, stress, and anxiety. This is what we commonly refer to as the holiday blues. Today's guest is Bette Alkazian, a licensed marriage and family therapist. Bette is a world-renowned parent and family coach, speaker, and owner of Balanced Parenting, working with families throughout Southern California. Given the pandemic and that so many community-based seniors were placed in isolation last year, in addition to ongoing fears and restrictions, I'd like to take this opportunity to broadly discuss with Bette how we can help reduce some of that loneliness with our aging loved ones. So welcome, Bette.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for your time and for joining us. But we are going to jump right in. So some people might find this kind of counterintuitive to think that someone who has been feeling lonely for an extended period of time, believe it or not, a large crowd or gathering could be overwhelming for that person. Do you have any tips or suggestions on how to include our older family members in holiday gatherings, yet while respecting their kind of apprehension, if you will?
I think overwhelming is such a great word to talk about in this situation because very often we don't realize that as we get older, it's harder and harder to process being in crowds, being with a lot of people. Sometimes people don't hear as well. Sometimes their nervous system doesn't process their environment as well. So it's really important to be respectful and understand that our older family members and friends sometimes aren't processing being in the crowd in the same way you and I might be processing it. So that one-on-one connection is often a great way to help somebody feel welcomed, to help them feel attended um, to respect the fact that they might not be hearing or understanding what's going on in the conversation, and maybe even to interpret. I know sometimes when my kids are talking about something, I'm like, what are they talking about? So it's to pay attention to how our older family members might be processing what's going on in the room, and maybe even just engage with them one-on-one is the best antidote to all that's going on that might become overwhelming to them.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent suggestion and an excellent point that I'd like to touch on, because it is also important to remember that when interacting with older adults, we have to take into consideration the surroundings. Like, you want an environment that is conducive to conversation. So if we are in a gathering, or even if it's an intimate gathering, you want to minimize background noise, like background music or groups of others conversing around you. And also, a well-lit environment is always a plus.
Yes.
Now, I know it's uncomfortable to go here, but holidays can also be stark reminders of those who are missing because they've passed away. Is it okay to talk about or reminisce about those who have passed?
Not only is it okay, I think it is essential, because especially if the loved ones who are gone are perhaps partner or very close family members or dear friends of the people who are present, we want to acknowledge the absence of the person who's missing. And that says to our older relatives and friends that I see you and I recognize that you might be hurting and remembering this person. And especially if it was a very long standing marriage or, partnership of some sort that makes them feel like part of them is missing. By not talking about it, it's like there's an elephant in the room that nobody's mentioning, and people need to feel seen and have their grief acknowledged, and to say, hey, I don't know about you, but I'm thinking about grandma or grandpa or whoever the missing person might be, and to say, are you thinking about her too? And to just acknowledge, like, hey, and we also have to remember that our older family members at a certain point in their lives, they have more people who have died than they might have friends and relatives who are alive. And so we have to recognize that too, that a large part of their history is absent and is gone. And there's a great deal of grief that goes along with this, especially at holiday times, right? Birthdays, anniversaries, death anniversaries, and holidays especially. These are times when the grief and the missing of our loved ones becomes bigger and more amplified.
Yeah, more prominent. But
Yeah,
I agree that I think so many of us are apprehensive to address it, but it does, you feel the weight in the room when it's the unspoken. And I think it's important to remember at the end of the day, all we have are memories. And so it's okay to address that, and it's okay to reminisce.
exactly. And don't be afraid of saying something. If they don't want to talk about it, they'll let you know. And it's okay, then you can honor that too. But to not be afraid to say what might be so much in the forefront of their thinking is really such a lovely acknowledgement,
Yes.
as and makes them feel less invisible. I think older people feel invisible more and more as they get older, and it makes them feel seen. And I really think our older community members need to feel more seen than they typically do.
Well, that's a great takeaway. And I, of course, second that. And as a geriatric care manager, I do like to to see and be with my clients. But there are many of my clients, they have adult children living in other states or far away. And there are a number of reasons families are unable to celebrate together this holiday season. Can you offer any suggestions on how families can be supportive across the miles and help combat those feelings of loneliness we were talking about?
Well, I think the first thing is really to acknowledge that the holidays might be a harder time, and to just say, hey, being apart is hard enough other times of the year, but during the holidays, it's even harder. And again, that acknowledgement just makes people to feel seen and understood. And that is such a lovely way to connect with our loved ones. So just the acknowledgement is number one. I know that sometimes connecting over Zoom and having perhaps a family gathering over Zoom, or even a one-on-one FaceTime or WhatsApp video conference kind of connection, is a lovely way for our people to see us and to feel connected to us, even if we can't be in the same place at the same time.
Right.
Sometimes there might also be, you might send a gift and say, don't open this until we're on video chat. And that's kind of fun to, watch them open gifts, or to both do that, send them to each other and open together, so that you feel like you're sharing something. In my family at one point, we had a holiday meal, and we set the FaceTime up so that we felt like my mom was with us at the table. And that was kind of cool. She felt like she was with us. We felt like she was with us. And, uh, so sometimes just being creative and coming up with different ways to help our relatives feel included, even if we're miles and miles apart.
I love your idea of sending a gift and opening it together on FaceTime or Zoom. It could be fun to even build on top of that. You can mail a gift that carries a family tradition, like, for example, grandma's famous sugar cookie recipe. Just to know that, not only are they still thought of, but they're still incorporated in family tradition.
Beautiful. Yes.
I think it's also important to touch on the needs of family members. Do you have any tips for caregivers, whether they're local or across the miles, on how they can be supportive without overextending themselves?
Um, Good question. I think that it is always important for all caregivers, whether it's parents of young kids or parents of older adults, I mean, kids of older adults, or whatever role we might be playing, not to um, give to excess, right? When we give to the point of where it goes beyond what we're able to do or willing to do or wanting to do, and it gets to the point of resentment. I always say when we feel resentful, that a boundary has been crossed. So sometimes we do have to set boundaries and say, you know what, mom, I love you, but I'm not able to do this. And like, here are my boundaries, that this makes me feel comfortable. It keeps me safe and it keeps me from feeling angry and resentful toward you. So boundaries are a really important element to any relationship. Sometimes that means delegating a doctor's appointment to someone like you or to other family members, or whatever it, taking yourself into consideration should be done guilt-free, as long as you're taking care of yourself and protecting the relationship at the same time.
Great. That's great advice year round, not only just at the holidays. Now,
Agreed.
you touched on something, taking care of yourself. Do you have any tips on, or, like, what does self-care mean, or what are examples of self-care?
Hmm. That looks different for everyone. For some people, self-care might be alone time, especially introverts tend to do really well by recharging being alone. Extroverts tend to recharge by being among people. So whatever works for you, for somebody, reading a book alone on the beach, or in quiet by a fireplace might be a recharge. And for someone else, it might be having a cup of coffee and, with a friend. So whatever that is for you, it's such an individual thing, right? Sometimes getting a manicure just feels, like a decadent pleasure. And for other people, that doesn't feel pleasurable. So it's really knowing who you are and what you need to feel good and to fill up your bucket, because we can't really give from an empty bucket. We have to fill ourselves up before we can give to others.
Yeah. And again, that's across the calendar, not just for the holidays. But thank you. You've given some great quick minute tips and tools on how we can, as caregivers and as older adults, combat some of the stressors that are involved with the holidays. And Bette, I want to thank you so much for your time and input on what I see as a very important topic. I wish you the happiest of holidays.
Thank you so much. And thank you for all you do for your people, your
Oh,
clients. I know what a difference you make for so many people.
well, they're like family to me. So it's important that I listen to what you're offering, because I want to honor their feelings and wishes this holiday season. And to each of you who are listening, wishing you good health and much happiness throughout the upcoming year. Thanks so much, and we'll talk to you soon.